Well, good morning from a bright and sunny Silverstone for day 2 of this Ferrari festival. I don't know about you, but I am super excited about today's racing. Yesterday threw up some real surprises, didn't it? Because we had a real sort of shake-up of what was the normal running order.
Yeah, it was a fantastically dramatic race, and some of the racecraft that we enjoyed during the course of the race yesterday was absolutely awesome. You know, I waxed lyrical about the Carl Cavers, Andrew Morrow battle, and Faisal.
You're good at waxing lyrical.
Indeed. Faisal Al-Faisal coming into that as well. So what, of course, it means for us, Amanda, is that it almost acted like a teaser for what we can expect today. And first thing on the agenda, of course, is qualifying.
That's right. Well, of course, when drivers have already had one day of racing, it lends itself very well to qualifying on day 2. But the big thing is if you've had a bad race, which a number of people did, particularly some of those front runners, how are they going to approach qualifying and the race today? Because as we're getting closer to the end of the season and, of course, the championship, points and points for finishing become even more important.
Absolutely. Points make prizes, the old adage, isn't it? And yeah, every single one of those points is utterly crucial. As you say, we get to the sharp end of the season because after this we go to Spa-Francorchamps and then that will be it for season 2023. So during the course of this qualifying session, Amanda and I will try and bring you the runners and the riders and who is doing what. Of course, we'll keep our eyes completely across the timing screens and we'll try and bring you some insight from some of the driver coaches and how they're motivating their drivers during the course of this really critical session where, I remind you, pole position does carry an additional point.
It does indeed. It carries points, as does fastest lap in the race. So it really is important for the drivers to get themselves dialed in and, of course, get those vital positions on the grid, because of course what we saw yesterday is in fact what many of the drivers predicted was going to happen during the race. Those first couple of corners can lead to all sorts of chaos and mayhem, so it's really important to have grid position which you can then carry forward into the old traditional part of the track when you can then start to spread out a bit and hopefully stay out of trouble. But those first couple of corners were quite interesting, weren't they?
Yes, they were, just a little, yes. So, very succinctly, you've put it absolutely right. There is a lot of pressure on this qualifying session. During the course of the session, we, of course, will try and bring you all the insight we can from down here in the pit lane. But the man who has the privileged position up there in the Tower of Power, who can bring us all the action across qualifying, it's a very good morning from both of us, Mark Werrell.
Good morning, Dave. Good morning, Amanda. The power of Tower. Right, well done. Yeah, looking forward to this one. It was a really good day yesterday. You can see beautiful clear skies over Silverstone. Ambient temperatures slowly warming up as well as we look forward to qualifying in advance of round 8 of the 2023 Ferrari Challenge UK. Full Grand Prix circuit, so it's the full 3.66 mile configuration that we're on. And I would say qualifying conditions absolutely ideal in reality. It's not too warm, it's not too chilly. The track temperature, as you can see, is 22 degrees and there is a very light breeze, but not much more than that. So we are on for an absolutely brilliant qualifying session. So you might not be familiar with the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, so we managed to film an onboard lap with the number 77 Grey Paul Birmingham car that's driven by Paul Simonson. So let's go on board for a lap of Silverstone. So you're over the start-finish line, you're shifting up from 5th into 6th as you approach the very fast Abbey corner. A quick dab of the brake for Abbey, hug the corner, and then as you head through that, you're almost flat out through Farm, and then into the heavy braking area for the right-hander at Village. Down into 3rd, a short acceleration from one side of the circuit up to the other as you then go into the tightest corner on the circuit, the loop. Concentrate on the exit though, carry the speed out of the corner, and then you go flat through the left-hand kink at Aintree and onto the Wellington straight. Use all of the curb on the exit of Aintree, but be cautious with those track limits. Underneath the vehicle bridge, up towards the BRDC centre on the right-hand side, but a late brake for Brooklands. Trail brake into the corner and go for a late apex. You're down to 4th at this point. Squirt of the throttle, down to 3rd for Luffield, and again, V it off. A late apex, but ensure you're on the power nice and early as you get out of the corner. Get a good exit because you carry all of that speed and momentum through the flat-out right-hand kink at Woodcote and then all the way down the National pit straight on towards Copps Corner. Copse corner, you're in 5th gear, quick dab of the brakes, but get on the power nice and early. Be careful not to run too wide on the exit as well. And again, a good exit out of there. You're up to 6th as you approach Maggots, and you're flat through the left-hander of Maggots, but then brake for the first right-hander at Beckett's. You're down to 5th. You take the left-hand aspect of it, lose a little bit of time there because it's this corner here, the right-hander and the exit of Beckett's. You've got to concentrate and again, get the car out of there quickly through the flat-out left-hand kink at Chapel and carry that momentum all the way down the Hanger Straight. Some drivers will take 7th, most will stay in 6th, and as you approach Stowe Corner, you go down to 5th for Stowe Corner, nice and late on the brakes again, balance the car through the apex, stay tight to the apex, but then let the car run out wide onto the exit curb as you head down through the Vale and in towards the braking area for Club Corner. 3rd gear through there, but stay to the left, and then you can get on the power nice and quickly through the double apex right-hander. Might be a slight lift for some of the cars, perhaps not in qualifying, but in the race on worn tyres, you shift up through the gears, over the start-finish line, and that is a lap of the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. So it is so important to hook all of that up in qualifying, and we managed to chat to a few of the drivers about how critical it is to get it absolutely perfect come this qualifying session.
This circuit, more than any other, I would say, is all about qualifying.
It's a lot more pressure because you've got a limited time to try and set your fastest lap. So it's the pressure is on you to try to not only go fast but not make mistakes either.
It's all about finding the space to get the perfect lap.
You're trying to find all the different track limits and where you can push the car to.
For me, it's all about just clearing your mind, adjust to the conditions and give it your best shot.
You're just trying to get your best 3 laps out, so you're pushing it harder and harder and harder so you can get a better grid position.
You probably do about 6-7 laps at the most, of which your 3rd to 5th laps are going to be your best.
If you think you've set a good lap and you can't go any better, save your tyres for the race because it could come in handy later on in the race.
We're all within 0.6, 0.7 of a second of each other from the top to the mid-pack.
If I'm 48, 6, 7, it puts you quite far back, so when the race starts.
I'm going back with the coach Ollie, who's fantastic, and we're fastidiously looking at everything where I can make up 0.1, 0.2 of a second here and there. And it's just the difference of stamping on the brake a little bit later, getting on the accelerator a bit quicker.
I really want pole position, so if I do get pole, I'll be over the moon, and I know my race pace is going to be as good, if not better, than all the other guys in Shell.
Well, in yesterday's session, it was Carl Cavers that qualified on pole position, and whilst he didn't lead all of the race, he did lead the important lap, which was the final one, to grab his first win of the season. It was his 2nd pole position in the Trofeo Pirelli yesterday. In the Coppa Shell, Paul Hogarth qualified on pole position. So we'll see what happens in this one. The build-up continues, and Dave and Amanda are down there in the pit lane.
Right, well, here we are in the pit lane. Of course, the end of the pits there, you can still see the red light on, so that means that the cars aren't allowed out on track yet, despite the session technically having started, although it hasn't obviously started. I've been seeing this wonderful great big sweeper going up and down, clearing up some mess that's obviously been brought onto the track from the cars that were on the session beforehand. Yeah, and he was just actually out on the pit straight just a moment ago. But that really goes to highlight how important keeping the track tidy, and of course brings us on to the conversation about tyres, because tyres, well, you can tell us, what are the rules about tyres vis-a-vis qualifying going into the race?
Well, I hope I've interpreted it correctly, so I don't always do, but as I understand it, the tyres that you qualify are on the tyres that you race on. Therefore, there's always this discussion and this argument between drivers and driver coaches in that the very... there you can see those very tyres. I don't know. Well, Peter's got a brilliant shot here of the Pirelli P-Zeros. So, what I'm trying to say is that you probably go out for the first part of qualifying on a set of scrub tyres. The drivers will then come in, put a new set of tyres on, which is what they will hope to set their quali lap on. but they try and do it in the minimum of laps that they can, because it gives them then tyre longevity in the race. And I think, and it is complete supposition on my part, remembering that wonderful battle yesterday between Andrew Morrow and Carl Cavers, I believe that Carl had done perhaps a slightly better job of looking after his tyres than Andrew Morrow, and that gave him a little bit of a pace advantage. And of course, critically, it allowed him to make that overtake in the end.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, there's a real strategy that goes on here in terms of, you know, what do you do to look after the rubber that you've got, because when it comes to the race itself, that's of course when you really, really need it.
Exactly, because what actually is happening there is when you've got a new set of tyres, in fact, if we take a look at them, you can see they're actually covered in, they're quite hard. They're not as sticky as you would expect race tyres to be. And they've got a bit of dust, and there's just a bit of the sealant that will have come from the factory. Once they have gone through one heat cycle and 1 or 2 sort of laps around the track, that is when they're at their absolute optimum. So you don't want to be going out into the race with a brand new set of tyres on, because you will not have the perfect grip for a lap or 2 until they've come up to temperature.
No, the reason I was smiling, Amanda, was actually I'm entertained by what you tell me, always. Not only that, there's some brilliant camaraderie going on here, because Julian Dye, you can see he's in the car, he's waiting to go out for his qualifying session, and there was a little bit of banter going on between Stuart Marston and Julian Dye at the same time. I'm going to do something, I'm not allowed to do this, but to heck with the rules, let's just dive in here and speak to Julian Dye. Good morning to you. You're one of the new drivers into the Ferrari Challenge UK this year, and a wonderful addition to the grid you have been as well. Julian, your characteristic is such that whenever I see you, you have a smile on your face.
Dave, that's because I love you. And you do a great job. It's brilliant to have you here. I must say, like I say, I'm just loving it. I'm enjoying. The guys have been so welcoming. Like the Ferrari family, as I call it. Yeah, it's just been brilliant. I bring my family here as well, who are your family now. So it's been great. Yeah, looking forward to getting out there now, though.
And Julian, you know, you've really come on leaps and bounds from the very start of the season to where you're at now. So I'm guessing you take great pride in that achievement.
Oh, immense pride. Ross has been a massive help for me. The guys are also very encouraging. I'm pushing it, and even yesterday, my fastest lap, I had a couple of little edgy bits where I could have been faster. So it's just great. It's great that the guys are pushing you along, and yeah, I'm getting much more control of Penzo. So Penzo's loving it. She had a little bit of damage yesterday, but nothing too much. So yeah, big smile still.
Wish you well for your qualifying and of course the race to come. And everything that he was saying there is true about this Ferrari family, and a big part of that, of course, is Stuart Marston, who had a tricky day yesterday, Amanda.
Well, he did indeed. I couldn't actually hear what you were saying there, because some of the cars have now started up. But Stuart, we just talked there about the tricky day you had yesterday in the start, but of course in the race, although it didn't finish so well, my goodness, you made up for it.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to what I said. I followed Al Faisal through the first 30% of the race, and then it obviously left me, but it took me through from 7th place up to 1st place. When the tyres started to go, just with a bit of inexperience, I was still pushing, and it just slid out on me and ended up at the back of the grid. So unfortunately that was that. So I can't go out with these guys straight off now because they're down to the canvas. I've got a new set of slicks that are going on in about 10 minutes time, so I'll join this group in about the last 15 minutes, hope there's no red flags, and get a good time in. So
see, I was just talking about that and how important it is to actually get your tyres through a heat cycle and scrubbed off for the race. But what you don't want to do is actually put too much through them in qualifying, because then of course you're going to be racing on some second-hand tyres.
It really, really does make a difference. If you bring your tyre for the first 2 laps, you get 3 to 4 really hot laps on those tyres. After that, it just falls away half a second a lap slower. So it's very important to hit that window where there's no traffic at all, and then fingers crossed you hook up every corner and you get a great time. So that's what we're aiming for. So hopefully that will.
So whilst you're standing here in the pits and you're watching everybody ready to go out, I know it's the strategy not to, and to let them sort of clear the track up, but how are you actually feeling?
To be honest, after yesterday, I know I can put together a great lap. If I don't, and I'm at the back of the grid, I know I can come through them all with my racecraft. So either way, I'm pretty confident. I just need to get to the race and hold my own. So.
Great stuff. Well, listen, Stuart, thank you very much. I think, as you can hear, the cars are now all leaving the pits, which rather suggests that the green light that we can't see has in fact turned green. So, Mark, maybe you can tell us more.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, the green light comes on at the end of the pit lane, which means the 30-minute qualifying session for the fourth weekend of racing, and qualifying for round 8 of the championship is underway. Talking about those tyres, case in point about getting a quick lap in nice and early before you take too much life out of those tyres. Well, Carl Cavers qualified on pole position yesterday and only did 4 laps in qualifying to set the pole position time. Yet other drivers took 12 laps of life out of their tyres in qualifying yesterday, which then meant, of course, come the race, their tyres are just going to drop away. The Pirelli tyre is a fantastic tyre, but it's understandably, as you put more through it, it's going to start to deteriorate, as naturally any tyre would do. So for Carl Cavers, 4 laps in qualifying meant that he went into the race with the best possible tyres. He set the least number of qualifying laps than anybody else at all. So let's see what pans out in this one. Stuart Marsden, a slightly frustrated spectator, but absolutely he will get on it, and as soon as he comes into this session he'll be looking to push. Hans Sickens is one of the first to head out onto circuit, so they're all just on an out lap at the moment, so the tyres go on cold, so you work the tyre on the out lap to build the temperature into it, and some of that is done by moving the car around and the general rotation and lateral movement of the car, but some of it's done with the brakes as well, so the brakes heat up and they will then start to penetrate the wheel rim, and the heat and then the wheel itself will then penetrate into the carcass of the tyre. So it's not just about surface temperature of the tyre, it's about penetration into the carcass of the tyre and building up the internal temperatures rather than just the surface temperatures, and a combination of those is what gets that tyre in the sweet spot nice and early. And because it's a long out lap here, you've got plenty of opportunity to build that temperature in the carcass. So Hans Sickens is the first to head onto a flying lap. I think we have already got all of the cars out on circuit, with the sole exception that we know about of Stuart Marsden, who has had 3 podiums so far this season in Coppa Shell. He has not as yet had a pole position in Coppa Shell, because that's largely been dominated by the Stratstone Manchester car of Paul Hogarth. There's Julian Dye, who we were chatting to. Out there also is Robert Rees, representing Dick Lovett Swindon. He had a good little squabble yesterday and ultimately finished in 13th position. William Terrier is following him round on circuit. William finished 11th yesterday, and I think that was equaling his best of the season. So he started the season at Snetterton with an 11th and equalled that yesterday, so he'll be looking to build on a solid one. So the first of the flying laps already just starting to be built up, as just still on their out lap goes Robert Rees and William Terrier. So they are safely through the village and up towards the loop. They will have now started their first flying lap through Aintree Corner. That's one of the corners that on the onboard lap I was saying is so critical to get a good exit out of there. We're not necessarily going to see the super quick times coming on the first flying lap, and already you can see there the brake lights coming on Robert Rees's car. Jonathan Satchel is in the pit lane waiting to go. His professional driver coach Chris Diamond just off to the left hand side there in the green shorts. So Jonathan Satchel, local man really, lives just down the road from Silverstone, heading out onto his first out lap. But the quick time in the first sectors coming in from Hans Sickens, and also out on track number 51 Carl Cavers will of course be one to look out for, because he qualified on pole position yesterday. You could see how much of the nose of the car dips down as he's onto the brakes heading round through Copps Corner, and the first sector time for Carl Cavers is a 38.7. The circuit is broken into 3 sectors. You can see him using all of the curbs there as he bounced over the curbs, heading round through Maggotts and Beckett's. And first sector not quite as quick as Hans Sickens has done, because Hans Sickens has popped in the fastest lap that we've seen so far, but we've only had a few cars come over the start finish line to post their first flying laps, and Carl Cavers is still on his first flying lap as he descends down to the bottom section of the circuit up towards Stowe Corner. turns in towards Stowe, get the car nice and balanced because he didn't just drop away. It's slightly off camber on exit, so it's quite easy to run wide there on the exit of Stowe corner and go beyond the curb line. But for Carl Cavers, he's about to chalk his first flying lap into the book. He is pretty quick through the middle sector of the lap, uses all of the curbs through the first section of club, and as he comes over the start finish line, goes second quickest. So 2 minutes 7.410 from Carl Cavers on his first flying lap is just over 0.3 of a second slower than Hans Sickens has managed so far. Graham DeZille in the number 19 car, the Brands Hatch winner, is third quickest, and Andrew Morrow, who is the championship leader at the wheel of the number 4 car representing Charles Hurst, is fourth. In the early stages of Coppa Shell, the fastest of those drivers is Paul Simonson, who was in 5th place and has now just dropped down into 6th because it is Paul Rogers that has now gone quickest in Coppa Shell. Times shuffling around in the early stages, as you would expect. Now Carl Cavers, through the first sector of the lap, is slightly slower than Hans Sickens is doing on this lap. Han is already making his way up towards the braking area for Stowe corner. He's gone quicker than anybody through the first sector. He has done an absolute best also through the second sector of the lap. He is already on provisional pole position and is about to, I think, improve upon what is the provisional pole time of a 2 minutes 7.044. Nice and neat and tidy through club. Start to get on the power. He'll be pretty much flat through the double apex right-hander at club as the tyres are so new in qualifying. Runs a little bit wide coming out of club as he heads over the start-finish line. That is a 2 minutes 6.044, which is now 1.3 seconds quicker than anybody else. The pole time yesterday was down in the 2 minute 4s though, so there's a bit still to come in this session, one would have thought. Hans Sickens has had 2 poles so far this year. There in the pit lane with work going on is Faisal Al-Faisal, who had a brilliant run yesterday. Didn't hook up qualifying yesterday, that was why Faisal qualified down in 11th position on the grid, but amazingly fought his way through into the podium spots and finished on the podium for the first time yesterday. Graham DeZille, the number 19 car, the Brands Hatch winner, is now 5th quickest at this stage and is just about to head through the first sector of this lap that he's on, slightly slower than it is previously gone. So the circuit broken into 3 sectors. The car that's following him round though is Andrew Morrow, the championship leader, and he has just gone an absolute best through the first sector of the lap. The circuit's broken into 3 sectors. The first sector brings them from the start-finish line through the right-hander at Abbey, through Farm Corner, in towards a heavy braking area for Village and the Loop, and it's down the Wellington Straight, almost underneath the vehicle bridge where the first sector ends. The second sector is much, much longer. That brings you through Brooklands, through Luffield, over the old Grand Prix start-finish line that's now the National Straight, through Copps Corner, through Maggots and Beckett's, and part the way down the Hanger Straight, so it's a much, much longer middle sector of the lap. And the final sector brings you from the Hanger Straight really just through Stowe Corner and Club. Now Andrew Morrow is absolute best through the first sector, quicker than anybody has managed in this qualification session so far. He's just about to work his way out of the left-hand kink at Chapel and onto the Hanger Straight, and he will shortly be through the second sector of the lap. He had Graham DeZille to deal with, but Graham moved out of harm's way. Has it compromised the sector time for Andrew Morrow? Well, he's not quite as quick through the first sector as he has previously gone. He's probably about half a second shy of what is currently the absolute best through that middle sector, so a little bit of time has been given up. His best is a 2 minutes 7.223 for Andrew Morrow, but I think he has aborted the lap potentially. Graham DeZille comes into the pit lane, and Andrew Morrow went through and did not improve in the end. No, he backed things off. He did come into the pits, so he did abort the lap in the end, as did Graham DeZille, so it didn't quite come together for him. The 23, the Grey Paul Birmingham car of William Terrier. He is 12th quickest currently. Hasn't done that many flying laps as yet that represent the kind of pace that he would have, so it's probably about 10 seconds shy of his qualifying time from yesterday, so he's put a couple of laps in but hasn't quite strung them together. And Hans Sickens is in the pit lane as well, the HRO in entered machine. Han, who was lying second jointly in the championship standings after qualifying yesterday, dropped to third because of that win for Carl Cavers. So Hans Sickens is in, Andrew Morrow is in, Carl Cavers are in, and as you can see, the process of you've set a time on the used tyres, now let's bolt on the brand new fresh set of Pirellis, and then head out there, and as Amanda and the drivers were alluding to when they were down in the pit lane with Dave Richardson, scrub those tyres in. So the releasing compound that releases them out of the mould in the factory, you need to scrub that off, and then a lap later the tyres will start to come in, and they'll be absolutely in the sweet spot for 2 or 3 laps, and that's when you've got to hook it together. John Dillon is out there. John had a reasonable race yesterday. There was a little bit of damage to his car, and it looks absolutely fine today. John, who's been racing Ferraris for a good number of years. Now, he will be hoping that he might be able to improve upon his position in yesterday's race, which saw him finish in 5th place. He's sort of been 4th, 5th a few times this season, but hasn't as yet broken onto the overall podium so far this year. But the Grey Paul Nottingham car heads up towards Stowe Corner to try and improve his lap time, and he will continue on the lap as we go back down to Dave Richardson, who's in the pit lane.
Thanks very much, Mark. I just find it absolutely fascinating down here because it becomes a very, very busy pit lane, as you can see. Now, you can see there the car of Paul Rogers, who's having to do almost a 3-point turn to try and find his way out of the pit lane once again, because about a third into the session, nearly all of the drivers have come in for that tyre change that I was talking about. And it is something of a work of art in terms of all the engineers making sure that they can work on the cars, and of course we can get the cars back out again. And just a bit of a delay here with Andrew Morrow. As you can see, he's in here and quietly contemplating, and Andrew's father is right alongside him, and that is Philip Morrow, and you can see Johnny Kane there, the driver coach to Andrew Morrow, and it looks like Andrew is going to be released almost immediately. But the Graham DeZille car is making its way down the pit lane, so that means they can push that number 4 car back of Andrew Morrow, and he's out on his way again. I'm going to grab a quick word with racing dad, that is Philip Morrow. Morning, Andrew's out there. He's done the first part of qualifying. How's he feeling?
He feels good. The car's running well. Yesterday, you know, he had a good race. This morning, he's quite relaxed. Looking forward to it. He's had a warm-up few laps now, so it's all over to him now. See if he can get pole.
Well, let's of course
it's out there with Cavers and Hans.
It was a fantastic race yesterday, and you must be very proud of what Andrew has achieved in such a short span of a racing career. It's remarkable, Philip.
Oh, it's incredible. That's 7 podiums this year so far, all third, first, second or third, just absolutely brilliant. He's 101 points. It has changed yesterday now with Carl, I think it's 13 behind him and Hans behind that, but let's see what he can do here today.
Final run into who will take the title. So great to speak to Philip Morrow then, who is father of Andrew Morrow. And on that note, back to you, Mark Werrell.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, so Andrew Morrow, a star even last year when he made his debut season in Ferrari Challenge UK. Missed the first round, but then was so quick throughout the course of the 2022 championship season. He actually finished runner-up in the Trofeo Pirelli, even though he'd missed the opening races. Well, he's leading this one, as was alluded to. He's finished on the podium in every race so far. He also had the privilege of taking his Ferrari up the Goodwood Festival of Speed hill as well a few weeks ago. So Paul Rogers out there and pressing on. Paul grabbed his first podium of the season yesterday, and he will be looking to see if he can build on that. The car that's entered by JCT 600. He is currently second quickest of the Coppa Shell cars in qualifying, 7th quickest overall. He's on an out lap at the moment, so he is another one that's been through this cycle of changing the car onto a brand new set of Pirelli slick tyres, and he's just about to complete the out lap and head on to that critical flying lap. So 16 minutes to go, and he's on his first flying lap on the new set of tyres, and also finally joining the session. He said he was going to come out with about 15 minutes to go. Well, 16 minutes to go. Stuart Marsden heads onto the track with his set of tyres that he's going to utilise in this one. So watch out also for the number 15 car, not Stuart's regular car. So nice and neat and tidy so far from Paul Rogers, out of the loop, using all of the curb, but not going beyond the curb line onto the painted green surface. That could incur a track limits warning or penalty if you continue to do that. You can head right the way up to the white line on the circuit. Where there's a painted curb, you can run onto the painted curb, but as soon as you put a bit of the contact patch or the tyre beyond the curb or the white line where there isn't a curb, then you'll be on the circuit limits. Particularly one of the key corners to try and stay within the confines of the circuit, the exit of Aintree onto the Wellington Straight, and in particular Cox Corner. But it's all neat and tidy for the moment from Paul Rogers. He has gone quicker through the first sector than he has previously gone, up towards Cop's Corner. It's the exit here through the right-hander, very quick through Cop's Corner. That you need to stay within the confines of the circuit. He runs onto the curb but doesn't touch the green painted tarmac, so nice and neat and tidy. Doesn't quite grab too much curb through Maggots, but takes all of the curb through the right-hand kink at Beckett's, and then get a clean exit out of Beckett's. Fire the car out of the corner, utilise all of the curb on the way out and through Chapel and onto the Hanger Straight. Nice and neat and tidy through the first sector. Is the second sector coming together for Paul Rogers? The answer to that is yes, it is, because he is quicker through the second sector than he has previously been as well. So certainly going to post an improvement on what is his current best time of a 2 minute 10.254, as long as he gets club correct. He's just heading in towards the left and then right kinks at club now. And on this brand new set of Pirellis, he should be flat out all the way through the right-hand aspects of Club Corner, carry that momentum over the start-finish line. And remember, this is just his first flying lap on the new tyres. He's got more to do as yet, and he goes third quickest overall, so topping Coppa Shell at the moment, and third quickest overall with a 2 minute 6.312, quicker through all three sectors than he's previously gone. Now, whether he can hang on to the Coppa Shell pole remains to be seen, because this car here, the number 6 car in the hands of Paul Hogarth, the black car with its green Dayglow livery to it, representing Stratstone Manchester, has been the man to beat really in Coppa Shell qualifying so far this year. He grabbed his 5th pole position of the season out of the 7 qualifying sessions that we've had yesterday, albeit the race didn't go to plan with him not being able to complete the race distance. But he is looking to try and right the wrongs of yesterday, and certainly chatting to him briefly last night and also over breakfast, he is more than up for this one. Lost ground in the championship, had his championship advantage whittled down to just 11 points yesterday, and he's going to want to make sure that he can sneak through without too much trouble. Might have just compromised himself heading up towards Stowe, getting past some traffic, but in the meantime, Amanda Stretton is down there in the pit lane.
Well, I'm down here in the pit lane with Jonathan Satchell. You're out of the car, which rather suggests qualifying is over for you.
Seems so.
Do you want to tell me what's going on?
I would if I could. We had a gearbox problem yesterday. There was some oil coming out of the top, so they changed the gearbox overnight, and it seems the same thing is still happening, which is really rather worrying, because apparently the gearbox would fix it. So they're going to get that fixed. It's a safety issue and all sorts of things. Oil coming out of your gearbox is not good for it.
Ideal, no. Was that having any performance impact on the car, or is that just from a preventative point of view?
We don't know yet. I mean, I was way off the pace yesterday, so maybe it was, but I mean, I think that might be an excuse. It might just be me.
Well, I'm glad to see you've got a smile on your face anyway.
Well, you've got to be realistic about these things, haven't you? But I was hoping it might sort of improve things, and it's pretty disheartening to find the same problem, and I'm worrying whether I make it to the race, so we'll see. So if you know where I'm starting from anyway.
Well, so if they've already made some changes already, what can be done between now and the race? Do you know yet?
Don't know. I mean, they put a new gearbox in last night, so they've done the big change, so that's disconcerting that it's still doing the same thing.
Oh, Jonathan, bad luck. I'm sorry for you. I hope to see you on the grid, though, even though it may well be not at the pointy end.
It's at the back pointy end. Nice to see you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Amanda. And yet another member of the Ferrari family that's always smiling, Johnny Satchell. You know, even when there's disappointment, he still has a big old smile on his face, because why would you not enjoy driving one of these glorious Ferrari 488 Evo Challenge spec cars around the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit? William Terrier makes his way up towards Stowe Corner with 11 minutes of the qualifying session to go, but we do have a new provisional pole sitter, and that is number 4, Andrew Morrow, who has just gone through and posted a 2 minute 4.717 last time through. Peter Hunter at the wheel of the number 82 car is having a much better qualifying session than he had yesterday, and he is 10th quickest currently and 3rd quickest of the Coppa Shell car, so that is a good performance from the man who's got little circuit racing experience but lots of rally experience as well. Ollie Webb, the pro driver that is tutoring Peter Hunter and continually over the course of this season bringing him on, and he's just getting quicker and quicker and quicker. Had a bit of a disappointing day yesterday, probably didn't quite end up as he would have wished, with certainly a poorer qualifying and not able to see the checkered flag, but going well for him here. So Andrew Morrow, the number 4 car, provisional pole position last time through. He's also set an absolute best in the first sector this time through as well, so could further chip away at the pole time. He's got Hans Sickins ahead of him on circuit, and Hahn has just gone through the first sector quicker than he has previously gone. The number 16 car is ahead of Andrew Morrow, but is at the moment about a second off him in terms of qualifying pace. And Hahn backs out of the lap by the look of things. Didn't quite come together as he would have wished. So Andrew Morrow, what's his second sector look like? He's given up a little bit of time through the second sector, maybe just sitting in the dirty air of Hans Sickins. He is, about half a second, 0.6 of a second shy of where he ought to be through that middle sector of the lap. So I'm not sure, despite the fact he set an absolute best in the first sector, we're going to see a further reduction of the pole position time here from the championship leader as he carves his way through Club Corner and over the start-finish line. Is it an improved time? 2 minutes 5 that time through is not an improvement, but Carl Cavers, the man who qualified on pole yesterday, could be one to watch out for at the wheel of the red and the Dayglow yellow number 51 machine, because he has just gone absolute best through the first sector. And is that a prompt for Hans Sickins, or is he waiting for a bit of a gap in the traffic? No, the latter. I thought he was waiting for a gap in the traffic. Hans Sickins heads onto a flying lap, but has he compromised the flying lap of Carl Cavers, who was potentially looking towards pole position? And as they go over the start-finish line to record the time, Carl Cavers does take pole position, didn't compromise his lap. 2 minute 4.286 for yesterday's race winner, so he finishes his flying lap. Hans Sickins, the number 16 car, now goes on to his flying lap. So Andrew Morrow no longer on pole. 8 minutes to go. He's still got time to bring the car into the pit lane, have a few tweaks and get back out there, but this is the key lap for Hans Sickins now. There's a little bit of traffic just ahead of him, which hopefully he will meet part the way down the Wellington Straight and it won't compromise him. 8 minutes to go. Hahn looking for, if he can, his third pole position of the 2023 championship season, but the first sector for Hans Sickins is not too bad, not quite as quick as he's previously gone. In fact, no, it is quicker than he's previously gone. It's about 0.2 down on the ultimate quickest through the first sector. So Hans Sickins stringing it together. He's fourth quickest at the moment. It's Carl Cavers, Andrew Morrow, John Dillon and Hans Sickins, the top four. The leading Coppa Shell car is fifth, which is the number 20 car of Paul Rogers. And sixth at the moment is the number 69 car, which is Chris Smith, who claimed his first win of the season yesterday. So the lap for Hans Sickins is coming together. Amanda has more news down in the pit lane.
Well, I'm down here with Paul Rogers. Paul, frustrating, happy? I'm not quite sure, because I just heard you say there that your fastest lap was blocked again, but you are still currently pole position in Coppa Shell.
Yeah, I changed my strategy a little bit on today from yesterday. I learned a couple of tricks from a pro driver, and I thought, well, I'll try them, And
tell us what they were.
I can't tell you who they were, what they were, no, because that would be giving secrets away. So, but anyway, I tried something a little bit different, and it did work for me. But I was predicted you get a lap prediction on the car, a 5.5, which would have been my lap record. And then I was blocked, I won't say by who, completely blocked by a guy speeding up who was, I've no idea what he was doing. Cost me half a second, so my 6.1 should have been a 5.5, so I'm a little bit frustrated, but my 6.1 actually still quite good.
So, well, whatever it was that you were doing obviously worked. Is this something you can actually carry forward into the race?
It certainly is, yeah, it's quite easy.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, will you tell me when we go off air?
Maybe, but it's all just about smiling.
Well, I'm glad to see you smiling. Thank you.
Like a game of chess, they're just not going to give their secrets away, are they? Hans Sickins, his lap did improve. He did go quicker. He didn't quite match the pole time of Carl Cavers. He's a quarter of a second shy of it, but it does get Hans Sickins, the number 16 car, potentially up onto the front row of the grid. 2 minute 4.540 is the second quickest time that we've got at the moment. Julian Dye looking to improve on 8th in Coppa Shell, 15th overall currently, and this lap is coming together for him as well. He's gone quicker through the first sector than he'd previously gone. His last lap time was his best in the session so far. What does the second sector look like from Julian Dye as he heads up towards Stowe Corner? He's quicker through the second sector than he's previously gone. He would need to improve by a reasonable amount to improve his grid position, because he is at the moment 1.5 seconds slower than the car ahead of him on the grid, which is William Tewier. So if he can string it together, that might work for him. Chris Smith, who claimed his first win in Coppa Shell yesterday, also looking as though he is on a reasonable lap at the moment. He is looking to try and overhaul the man that Amanda has just spoken to, Paul Rogers, who is the current Coppa Shell pole sitter. 5th quickest overall in the session. So can Chris Smith do anything? He's a little bit slower through the first sector of the lap, Chris. But as he heads up towards Cop's Corner, looking as though he's carrying good speed again with just under 5 minutes of the session still remaining. But overcooks it, heading round through Cop's Corner, loses the tail end of the car, and that slides sideways for a long, long period of time. So that is going to have taken a little bit of life out of those Pirellis. Let's hope that it's not flat-spotted them, because as we heard from Stuart Marsden with his spins yesterday, he did end up with damage to his tyres, which meant that's why he couldn't do the full qualifying session. Carl Cavers sitting patiently in the pit lane, and you can see in conversation, laptop in hand, Lewis Plato, his driver coach, just keeping an eye on the times that are coming in from other drivers, and if needs be they will send Carl back out there to do another lap. But at the moment I don't think anybody's out there that is currently troubling his pole position. His pole time is a 2-minute 4.286. That is just over a quarter of a second quicker than the number 16 car of Hans Sickins. Andrew Morrow, the championship leader, is currently 3rd. John Dillon is 4th. Paul Rogers is 5th. Chris Smith is 6th. And 7th at the moment is Robert Rees, is there in 7th place. As we look at the number 37 car of Elliot Pickering, who yesterday qualified 9th quickest, today is 11th quickest at this stage. William Terrier is out for another roll of the dice as well, to see what he might be able to do. Elliot Pickering's time, is it coming together for him? Not through the first sector, it's not, no. So Elliot Pickering will have backed out of this lap in the first sector by the look of things, much slower than he ought to have been going through the first sector, so he's not going to make that time up through the remainder of the lap, I'm afraid. But with 3 minutes to go, he's still got another opportunity to see if he can carve a little bit more time out of it. The Stratstone Manchester driver, who we saw out at Brands Hatch, haven't seen him at Snetterton or Alton Park. I think it's just Brands and Silverstone are the two he's doing this year, but hoping to, when the dates are announced for 2024, do a full campaign hopefully in 2024. So just working his way through round the corners. Chris Smith has come into the pit lane as well, so at best he is going to line up 2nd quickest of the Coppa Shell cars on the grid, which would be 6th position overall, but he'll also be thoroughly enjoying what has been a brilliant weekend for him, with a first Coppa Shell win yesterday. He was leading it earlier on, he dropped to 2nd, dropped to 3rd, got back to 2nd, and then back to the lead of Coppa Shell. So he's hoping to build on that momentum that he had yesterday, and also hoping to improve is the all-blue number 8 car from Dick Lovett Swindon of Robert Rees. Robert, brilliant qualifying session for him. 7th quickest at the moment compared to 12th yesterday. His qualifying time yesterday was a 2-minute 7.1. Well, it's a 2-minute 6.2 now, so he's almost got a second quicker than he did in qualifying yesterday. Paul Hogarth is the man that we haven't seen a great deal of in this qualifying session, the championship leader at the wheel of the number 6 car. He's only 4th quickest in Coppa Shell, and is going to head round through Village and up towards the loop to see whether he can try and find a little bit more time. 2-minute 6.579 is his best, so he would need to improve by about 3/4 of a second if he wants to take pole position in Coppa Shell today, going through the first sector, and he has gone quicker than he's previously gone. Good first sector from Paul Hogarth, but he's not the only one that's out there having a good first sector, because also the blue car of Robert Rees has just gone through the first sector quicker than he has previously gone. Session ends for Andrew Morrow, so the championship leader is going to line up 3rd on the grid. We heard from his father earlier on when he was chatting to Dave Richardson down there in the pit lane. There's Johnny Kane, his driver coach. But for Paul Hogarth, he heads up towards Cop's Corner, and the first sector was a good first sector from Paul Hogarth. Is he going to be able to post improvement? We also need to keep an eye on what Hans Sickins is doing at the wheel of the number 16 car, because he's not slow through the first sector and has gone quicker than he's previously gone through the second sector, so there still might be a twist or a turn in the tail here in qualifying. But Paul Hogarth looking to see if he can scoop up pole position number 6 of the season in Coppa Shell. Nice and neat and tidy coming out of Chapel and on towards the Hangar Straight. What does the second sector look like from Paul Hogarth? He's gone quicker through the first and the second sectors than he has previously gone. Well, he is currently 9th quickest overall, 4th quickest in Coppa Shell. Looks as though he didn't quite get Stowe exactly right, so might have just given away a 10th or so of a second there, in towards the braking area for Club Corner, and again just looked a little bit untidy midway through and slides it on the exit, so I think that might have undone the hard work in the early stages of the lap. As he comes over the start finish line, is it going to be an improvement? No, it's 3/10 slower in the end, just that last little sector where there's slight mistakes made, not much, just a little slide of the car here and a little slide of the car there was just enough to undo the quicker first 2 sectors that he'd done, all in that final sector. So checkered flag is now out. There's still a few cars to take the checkered flag, including the number 8 car, which is the car of Robert Rees, but I think he's backed out of the lap and has allowed the number 77 car of Paul Simerson to go through, who did our onboard lap. And Sickins out of the car and talking to his driver coach there on the right hand side, Ben Barnicoat. Ben Barnicoat, Ben Barker, I should say. So you can see the pit lane filling up, and yeah, Ben Barker chatting away to Hans Sickins, I can see there. Faisal Al Faisal has, I think, taken the checkered flag, so he is on his slowing down lap to come into the pit lane. And I mentioned yesterday Faisal Al Faisal had work to do from 11th on the grid to work his way through, as he was, to 3rd in the end. Well, it's not quite worked again in qualifying for Faisal Al Faisal. He's down to 13th position, so he's got a chunk of work to do. So qualifying is over. We'll run through the qualification order in a short while, but let's go back down to the pit lane and Dave Richardson in the meantime.
Right, down here in the pit lane, just literally as the session comes to an end. And of course, here is Paul Rogers. We're going to steam in here amongst everyone. I know you spoke to him. Paul, you're blessing the car, and we know the car, and you had even more in it.
I did actually have more in it. Actually, I predicted a 5.5 until somebody got in my way on Stowe, so I had to cut inside. I lost 5/10, but at least I know I can do that 5.5 on a new tyre, which was very nice. But a 6.1 we got there on the same lap, even though we lost a little bit of time, has got us pulled. So I'm amazed actually. I didn't expect, with Paul Hogarth and Simerson and the rest of them, I just thought I didn't think I had a chance here, so I'm really happy.
Oh, and deservedly so. And I know you're going to be presented with the Rotiform Pole Position Award, which we're going to allow you to be presented with now so we can get it for our cameras. And Paul, to be fair, and I know you won't mind me asking this, it's been such a turbulent season for you, and there were times where we were wondering whether we actually are following a big crash, whether you were going to be back, but you are, and you've always got a smile on your face. Now, this is just so addictive, isn't it, Ferrari Challenge?
It is. I think I've never tried cocaine, but it's more addictive than cocaine, I'm sure. It's certainly more addictive than alcohol, and it does, yeah, it really gets you. I mean, I live it and dream it. Running up to the race, after the race, you go through it, all the drivers do it. And the camaraderie in the pits as well, you don't underestimate that. I would really miss that. I mean, it's the drivers are all competing hard. We all love each other. We all watch for each other.
Many congratulations. Pole position. Rotiform Award goes to Paul Rogers. A brilliant job done, Mark.
Thanks, yeah, a fantastic job done for Paul Rogers. His second pole of the season. Let's confirm the results. And the overall pole position goes the way of Carl Cavers, with Hans Sickins second quickest, and the championship leader, Andrew Morrow, will line up third on the grid for round 8 later on today. John Dillon was fourth. Then it's Paul Rogers, who took pole in Coppa Shell. Only just, though, look at how close it was, just a 10th of a second separating himself and Chris Smith. Robert Rees finished in 7th place in qualifying. Graham Dazil there in 8th place, and then it was the two Pauls, Hogarth and Simerson, who finished 9th and 10th. Paul Hogarth with a bit of work to do, the championship leader in Coppa Shell. Then as we move outside of the top 10 in qualifying, in 11th place was Elliot Pickering. Stuart Marsden was there in 12th place, with Faisal Al Faisal worse qualifying than yesterday, 13th. Can he make it through onto the podium like he did yesterday? We'll find out later on. William Terrier was 14th, ahead of Julian Dye, Peter Hunter, and Jonathan Satchell, with his problems, is going to start off the back of the grid. So that's the order from qualifying. Let's go back down into the pit lane, this time with Amanda Stretton.
Thanks, Mark. Yes, pole position man for Trofeo Pirelli, Carl Cavers, well done. I'm taking full credit for this, having said to you yesterday on the grid, well, asking you if you could transfer that pole position into a win, and you did. But this has put fire in your belly.
Yeah, absolutely. Being pole again, 2 days on the trot, gives us a great position for the race. Hopefully we can make it 2 from 2. The lap was a little bit compromised in the final chicane going through club. Hans went off track, came back on, and it just slowed me down by about 2.5-3 tenths. Otherwise we'd have been in the 3s, so there's a lot of pace in the car, so hopefully we'll be all right for the race.
I was actually looking at the times, qualifying times yesterday to today. You're sort of on a par, so do you think you've still got pace in there?
Yeah, I think there's another 3 or 4 tenths in the car, easily. You know, it's a nice day, the track's a bit more rubbered in after yesterday, and saved the tyres a little bit as well. We didn't go pounding round on them, so that should give us a good position for the race.
Obviously, yesterday in the race, you lost the lead on the first couple of corners. I don't want to dwell on that. What can you do then? What sort of lessons are you learning going into the race later on?
Well, you know what? You've got Hans and Andrew behind. You've got to defend. Trying to defend against 2 is really difficult. Han got a really good run off the start, so I had to defend the inside, so Andrew could get around the outside. But I knew we got the pace, so it was just being patient, and it was a bit down to the wire being the last lap, but we got the job done, and we'll do the same again today if the same happens.
Brilliant stuff. Well, here is your wonderful Rotorform pole position trophy to add to yesterday's. Congratulations to you, Carl Cavers.
Big smiles all round there in the pit lane. Carl Cavers heading towards another pole position, and I think that means that now the extra point he gets for pole, he is going to have a 12-point deficit to Andrew Morrow. So let's look back at some of the highlights from qualifying for round 8 of the 2023 Ferrari Challenge. The green flag was waved and the cars all spilt out onto circuit very, very early on. Andrew Morrow was looking to see what he might be able to do to scoop up pole position, but Carl Cavers and Hans Sickins were all busy squabbling away. There was also, of course, the Coppa Shell to consider, and the number 20 car in the early stages, Paul Rogers, was setting the pace in that. John Dillon in the 61 had a good qualifying session and will ultimately line up in 4th position, but Paul Rogers, even with a slightly bulked qualifying lap, he would go towards pole. Disappointment for the championship leader though in Coppa Shell, because Paul Hogarth didn't really hook it together. Andrew Morrow briefly went onto pole position, but he is going to line up on the outside of the front row of the grid, and some drivers pushing a little bit too hard. There was a big old spin for yesterday's Coppa Shell race winner, Chris Smith at Copse Corner, a full 360-degree spin. Let's see what his tyres look like after that high-speed spin for the race.
Well, so another really exciting qualifying session with some drivers not where we expect them to be, other drivers exactly where we expect them to be, Amanda.
Exactly. I think it's going to, all things lead now to a really exciting race. As you say, some of the drivers that we expect to see in position that's going to give them a lot of confidence when they start the race later on. And then there are those who've now got a bit of a point to prove, drivers whose laps were compromised or they had other issues, mechanical or otherwise. So yeah, I think it's going to be great. The weather's looking wonderful. That's always a help when you've got stable conditions from qualifying going into the race as well, so they know what to expect.
And as you can probably hear behind Amanda and I, it's a Ferrari Racing Days event, so we have the XX Programs cars and also the F1 Clienti cars here making a lot of row behind us, and we love it. Thank you so much for watching qualifying. Amanda and I will see you back here for the race.